right, welcome to Pro Football First 50 Years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. And I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to go back in time and check out a game maybe from the 20s or the 30s, obviously you can go online, find out who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was someone kicked, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might be able to find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we got to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on in today's game. Oh, powerhouses of powerhouses, boy. Back in the late 50s. Oh, my goodness. The Cleveland Browns at the New York Giants at Yankee Stadium. Does it get any better than that? Oh, my goodness. December 6, 1959. Now, I'm sure when they maybe got the schedule out, this is 1959. They probably had the visions of the fabulous finish of 1958 season. Oh, my goodness. What a one for the record books. Final game of the season. Cleveland was 9-2. This is a 58 season, not this one. I'm a Giant fan, so you got to give me my moment here. We stink now, so you got to give me my moment. But 58, Browns went into Yankee Stadium 9-2. Giants were 8-3. Browns just had to have a tie or a win, and they win the division. They host the championship game. Who knows what happens? But the Giants, it was 10-10. Pat Summerall kicks a 49-yard field goal, in the snow. Giants win and forcing a playoff game. The following week, the Browns come back to Yankee Stadium. The following week, the Giants win that one 10-0. Then the following week, the Colts come to Yankee Stadium, and of course, the 58 championship game. Oh my, what a finish! Oh my goodness gracious! But this season was a little bit different. In this game here, the Browns they had a chance. They had some hope. They had 4 losses. The Giants had 2. So what the Browns had to do was the Browns would have to win this game, which, spoiler alert, did not happen. Oh, not even close. They would have to win the final game of the season, which they did, and they would have to hope that the Giants would lose their final 2 games, and that would force a tie and a playoff, but that did not happen. The Browns fell apart. Well, I can't say so much fell apart. They had 2 1-point losses. The Browns and the Giants had 2 losses late in the season, and then the Browns lost a 1-point loss to the Steelers and another. Let's pop this up here, and they wound up losing 3 games in a row, including this one, and they wound up tied second place with the Eagles. So let's just show you where we had share screen. Let's show you with the Giants here. Their schedule. There's the 59 season. The Giants, they lost. They got the doors blown off them by the Eagles, 49-21. Then they lost a tough one here to the Steelers, 14-9. They gave them their second loss. They would only have 2 losses all year. They wound up with the best record in the league, 1959, 10-2. They had the best overall defense, points per game given up wise. Of course, that didn't help them when they got to the championship game. But and then we see after they lost here to the Steelers, they would rattle off their final 4 victories, finish at 10-2. I said, including this one here. I mean, oof. I mean, this was like a massacre. I mean, this was just horrible. I mean, it was just pandemonium at the end of the game. The goalpost came down, and before even the game was over, the goalpost came down. The crowd was on the field. We're going to talk about that. It was like Custard's last stand. Like Custard was down here, and the Giants were the Indians, and they came down. They massacred everything. It was 41-0 in the third period. Let's show you with the Browns. So as right here, the Browns were right here after they beat the Redskins. The Browns were 6-2. The Giants were 6-2. Both tied. The Giants had an easier schedule toward the end of the season, much easier than the Browns did. The Browns lost a tough 1-point loss to the Steelers. The Steelers finished at 6-5-1, but the Steelers finished at the end of the season. They finished very strong, winning a majority of their games. They started off week, which unfortunately for them took them out of the running early on. But they finished strong. So the Browns had to play a tough Steeler team. Then they had to play a tough 49er team. The 49ers were actually 6-1 at one point. They would fall apart too, as the Browns did, and they would finish 7-5, just like the Browns did. But still, the 49ers were a tough team. And as I said, this game here was just, my goodness, a massacre. And then the Browns would finish up the final game of the season, beating the Eagles 28-21. But at this particular point in time here, after the Browns beat the Redskins 6-2 and the Giants were 6-2, a lot of people were like, oh, maybe the same thing might happen in 59, which happened in 58, but it was not meant to be. Let's see. It just, it was one of those things. You kind of hoping, obviously, especially if you're the Browns. I mean, they had those two real tough losses. 2 1-point losses. I have not done videos on those two games, but I certainly will at one particular point in time. But I know one of the games, I think Lou Groza actually wound up missing an extra point, which would have at least maybe tied the game. But once again, it is what it is. Browns are always a very, very tough team. That was one of the things that that made it so exciting, especially in this division here. Because, two really good teams going at them. And from 1950 to 1965, every year from 50 to 65, except for 1 year, 1960, either the Giants or the Browns went to a championship game. So, but so I got a lot going on here for this game here. So I certainly don't want to start talking way too much here. So this game obviously was played in the old, shall we say, Yankee Stadium, not the newly built Yankee Stadium. So when we go to Wikipedia, obviously we got to go to the Yankee Stadium 1923. And then we got some pictures to show. All right, so let me share my screen here. We'll go to Wikipedia. Oh, Yankee Stadium. Here we go. 1923 Yankee Stadium, the original house that Ruth built. All right. Original Yankee Stadium was located, obviously, in the Bronx. It was home of the Yankees from 1923 to 2008, except for a couple of years when they did some renovation. It hosted 6,581 Yankee regular season home games in its 85-year history. Wow. Let's see, the stadium was built from 1922 to 1923 at $2.4 million. The construction was paid entirely by the Yankees owner, Jacob Ruppert, who was eager to have his own stadium after sharing the Polo Grounds with the Giants baseball team for the previous 10 seasons. The Yankees had been playing at the Polo Grounds in Upper Manhattan since 1913, sharing the venue with the Giants. However, relationships between the two teams were rocky. The Giants were harboring resentment toward the Yankees. The Yankees have been looking for a new and permanent venue since at least 1909. For the 1920 season, that's when the Yankees acquired Babe Ruth. In his first year at the new team, the Yankees drew 1.3 million fans at the Polo Grounds, outdrawing the Giants, which pissed them off. By the middle of 1920, the Giants had issued an eviction notice to the Yankees, which was soon rescinded. In 1921, the Yankees won their first American League pennant, and of course, in the World Series, who did they play? The Giants. Every game, a best-of-9 series, every game was played at the Polo Grounds. How crazy is that, huh? The Giants would win the World Series, though, but this exasperated the Giants owner Charles Stoneham and manager John McGraw. Their resentment of the Yankees and reinforced their insistence that the Yankees find another place to play their home games. So it worked out. Obviously, everything all worked out for the best. Obviously, the first game ever played in Yankee Stadium was April 18th, 1923, against the Red Sox, where they got Babe Ruth from. Here we go. Here's great freaking picture right here. The raising of the American flag on opening day in 1923. Basically the first game ever, raising of the flag. I mean, my goodness. I said, if I read all this stuff that would have happened here in Yankee Stadium, it was just, I'd be here for 4 months reading all this stuff. They had to do some renovations, 1974 and 75. So I got to scroll down here. And of course, then there's a replacement where they built a new Yankee Stadium. And we got, here's the box score here, or there was somewhere here, of the final. Looks like blew past it, which I didn't. Oh, there we go. They beat the final game September 21st, 2008, at the old Yankee Stadium, where they beat the Baltimore Orioles 7-3. With collegiate baseball, huge boxing matches back in the day. But college football, holy cow. Army and Notre Dame, oh my God, back in the 20s, and oh, wow. College football, look, Georgia Tech and Penn State at Yankee Stadium in 1925. The fiercely competitive Notre Dame Army game moved to Yankee Stadium, where it remained until 1947. Because back in the day, Notre Dame was king of the hill, but Army was unbelievable too. Without question, Army had some of the best teams ever. But then we keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. We should be able to get, see, these are all the Notre Dame Army games here that got played there. Yeah, some of them. You got 1928, 78,000 fans showed up for this one. Notre Dame beat Army here, 63. My goodness gracious. We keep scrolling. Professional football. Here we go. Right. The New York Yankees of the first AFL played there in 1926 with Red Grange and his manager, C.C. Pyle, or some people say Cash and Carry Pyle. They leased out Yankee Stadium for 5 seasons. Unfortunately for them, their AFL would only, you can say it would last 1 season, but for 5 of the 9 teams in the league, they didn't even finish the season. It went that bad. It went really that bad. But so the Yankees, 1926, of the first AFL were there for 1926. Red Grange. New York Yankees of the All-American Football Conference played there. The New York Giants moved into Yankee Stadium in 1956, where they went to the championship game, their very first season there. Of course, the Giants were there 56-73. Of course, then it was the greatest game ever played, the fifth, as it's dubbed. December 28, 1958, the Colts beat the Giants in overtime. The game was one of 3 NFL championships games that was played at Yankee Stadium. 56, 58, and 62 championship games were all played there. The hit was there when Chuck Bednarik tackled Frank Gifford in the last minute of 1960. The Eagles wound up winning. The hit caused a fumble. recovered by the Eagles that clinched the victory. The hit left Gifford with a concussion and forced his temporary retirement from football for the rest of the 1960 season and all of the 61 season. That's a heck of a concussion. Then of course, the Giants played there until 73. They played the first 2 games of the 73 season at Yankee Stadium. First week, they beat the Houston Oilers 34-14. And then the second week, basically, as time was running out, Norm Snead hit Bob Ducker down around the 10-yard line. You can check it out on YouTube. But of course, they didn't have any timeouts left. The Giants, the clock was ticking. Pete Gogolak runs on the field. And pretty much as time was running out, they snapped the ball back. Pete Gogolak kicks a field goal. The Giants tied the Eagles 23-23 in the second week of the 73 season. And then after that, the Giants were out of there, never to play in Yankee Stadium ever again. They moved to the Yale Bowl for the remainder of the 73 season. All the 74 season that they played in Shea Stadium, where they shared the stadium with the Jets in 1975. And in 76, they got their own stadium, Giant Stadium. But the Giants, played at Yankee Stadium for quite a while. But I mean, there was soccer there, just all kinds of, ice hockey was there. I mean, just concerts, all kinds of things. I mean, this just a very, very obviously, enormously popular stadium. I got some pictures here. Shows you like the layout of the field and everything. Gotta find it here. Oh, here we go. All right, here we go. Now you can see here, this is from the upper decks. I mean, you could see because this picture will be taken from like the upper. Right? I mean, you can see if you're way in the back here, and the game is all the way down there. Yeah, you're pretty far away from the field, and you can pretty much see as it is. I mean, there's really not. I mean, like over here, I mean, you're far away over here. It's still kind of, there's like nothing that's like, really, really close to the field. Here's another shot right here. Right. Once again, you can see, I mean, down over here, they're close to the end zone. And right here, they're right by the end zone. Now, if you catch a pass in this corner house at the end zone, right, and you come run, you run into the, over here. But I mean, there's a big, huge gap over here. Right. There's another picture here. Yankee Stadium, the Giants new home in 1956. So I guess guessing this might be a Giant game. It doesn't exactly say. Here's a picture from the outside. Good old Yankee Stadium. And of course, I don't know if I can. Doesn't have it in here. What do we got here? Here's the old Yankee Stadium right there. All right. I guess after it's being ripped up and torn down. Let me see if I can. Because obviously there's so many iconic. Here's Alan Amici's touchdown where he runs into the has him by Jimmy Patton has him by the head. Oh, there's Evan Tennell right there. Sam Huff. I mean, I couldn't even imagine how many Hall of Famers are in this picture. It's like Andy Robustelli right here, another Hall of Famer there. I mean, my goodness, here's a classic picture right here. I mean, my goodness. I'm not sure who Johnny Unitas tried. I was going to say Lenny Moore, but he's standing in the backfield trying to block or pretend to block. Here's the game-winning touchdown right here. Let me just, here's another shot from the back up right there. Right. Here's one of the many catches that Raymond Berry had during the day. I mean, I think he had like 12 catches. Sam Huff said that one of the things is in the 58 championship, he said, they got like a lot of times something that had like maybe Lenny Moore running on one side of the field, although he hurt his back and the Giants really didn't know that. But So it's like you either can shade over one way and help out, or you can maybe shade over the other way and help out, but you can't do both. So he said they were kind of, I guess, they didn't want Lenny Moore to kill him. So they made it so Lenny Moore didn't kill him, but also, of course, is that Lenny Moore had hurt his back. Which wound up leaving Raymond Berry. It's like, you got two Hall of Famers running pass patterns out there. It's like, and of course you got a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest, obviously, quarterbacks of all time throwing the ball. It's like, who do you cover, right? So unfortunately, Raymond Berry was the recipient of many catches during that day. But just unbelievable game. Here's Mel Triplett here trying to get away. Probably didn't get very far. I think this is Steve Myra lining up for the game, tying field goal here. Here's the referee in the end zone. Amici runs in there, standing there. So just unbelievable. Great stadium. I'm really happy that they wind up, they built another Yankee stadium right next to it. And it's still called Yankee Stadium. It's not like the Tampax, Taco Bell, McDonald's, Chuck E. Cheese, Yankee Stadium. No, it's called Yankee Stadium. So. All right, so we've got a lot of coverage on this one, a lot of coverage. So we're going to go to the Daily News, the December 6, 1959 edition of the Daily News. A little pregame action here. What's the word on the street before the game here? All right, here we go. December 6, 1959 of the New York Daily News. Oh, let's refresh that. Some of the zing went out of today's game between the Browns and the Giants when Cleveland suffered two consecutive one-point losses. However, to this sideline observer, it was a blessing in disguise because there was entirely too much talk in the wake of last year's crazy gyrations, which led to ties, playoffs, quarterback protection of point spreads, and the very last milking of the public's dollar at the ticket wickets. Let us remove this year at least any remote suspicion of a manufactured photo finish. Another playoff under the same weird form reversals at this stage could conceivably harm pro football. There is nothing wrong with honest gambling, but pro football proprietors are especially vulnerable to loose talk because a terrifically high percentage of them have gambling backgrounds. Ha. The late Burt Bell himself liked to place wagers on various sports, although he refrained from betting on pro football once he became commissioner. Very smart of him. What we got here? All right, here we go. Let's just start talking about it. As far as today's game, the Giants would surely like to win it as a matter of pride. They have been charged with playing too much dull defensive football. With the championship practically locked up, they can afford to gamble and prove they can shine, not just against a pathetic injury-riddled club like the Redskins, but against a Browns coach squad of specialists. The Browns are down, according to one of the coaches who told football writers they conceded the title too quickly after losing to the 49ers. They're debating benching Milt Plum and using Jim Ninowski. Well, I saw the Browns lose to the 49ers in San Francisco in an early exhibition game, and Ninowski that day had a miserable afternoon. The Browns miss Otto Graham, just as the Giants seem to go nowhere without Chuck Connolly. The Browns tend to play uninspired ball with either Plum or Ninowski. The Browns remind me of the Yankees. This is not their year, but there will be other seasons, and they will come charging back to make any foe regret downgrading them. Since 1950, the Browns have won 7 Eastern titles. Best our Giants could do is 2. I thought Jim Lee Howell paid a magnificent tribute to Paul Brown when he praised the Cleveland's club excellent coaching. Jim was impressed by the fact that all season the Browns fumbled only 4 times. That's freaking amazing. Next best team bobbled 19. I mean, the Giants have, they've had their fair share of fumbles. I can tell you that this much this year, that's for sure. But you need more than a good coaching. You need luck. The Braves still insist a bad call on Adcock's home run ball into the Coliseum screen cost them the NL pennant. They say it evens up in the long run. This may be true of a 154-game baseball schedule, but not the bobtailed football race. 1 year ago, on a fourth-period scoring drive, a play occurred that the Browns felt helped the Giants knock them out of the division championship. Gifford caught a pass from Connolly, ran 3 steps, was hit and fumbled. The Browns recovered. When 2 officials declined to make any ruling, Charlie Berry rushed in, called it an incompleted pass, and handed the ball back to the Giants. Ooh. In the 1-point loss by the Browns to the Steelers this year, Lane passed to Orr. Orr took no more than 1 step, was hit, and fumbled. The Steelers recovered. This was not ruled an incomplete pass, which would have put the ball back 19 yards to the point at which the play originated. Minutes later, Lane connected for the winning touchdown on the goal line. Apparently, boxing is not the only sport that generates controversial and costly decisions. Giants, 5.5-point favorites to sew up the East title. The Titans of the Eastern Conference of the NFL, the Giants and the Browns, clash at Yankee Stadium today before more than 65,000 fans in a battle that can bring New York its second straight division title. The Giants are 5.5-point favorites over the supposedly injured, riddled Clevelanders, who are tied for second place with the Eagles. Both are 2 full games back of the leaders. So what those 2 teams need, they have both, either the Browns and the Eagles have to win both their final games, and they got to hope that the Giants would lose their final 2 games to force a playoff, but that did not happen. Jim Leal's local forces are at a physical peak they haven't enjoyed since the season's opener at Los Angeles. The Browns, according to coach Paul Brown, are at their worst physical shape of the season. 2 weeks ago, the Browns were tied for the Eastern lead with the Giants, each with 6-2 records. Since then, New York has won 2, and Cleveland has lost a pair of 21-20 heartbreakers. Meanwhile, the Browns' injured list has mounted. Browns club is at a go-for-broke stage with a number of broken-down key players. Tackle Mike McCormick and all-league guard Jim Ray Smith have been hobbled by injuries for the past couple of weeks. Fullback Walt Michaels has a broken hand. This week, Ray Renfro, the Browns' great flanker back and one of the ace pass receivers in the league, pulled a muscle in his left leg and missed the last couple of days of practice. Howell said yesterday, however, we are not going to be lulled into a false sense of security by all those reports. They have announced injuries in the past which suddenly disappeared on the day of the game. Maybe so, but the odds makers who had the game a 4-point spread early in the week kept moving the Giants up as favorites with each succeeding injury report out of Cleveland. Another fact, the Giants have beaten the Browns 4 straight over the past 2 seasons, including last year's playoff classic. With the exception of the number 2 quarterback, George Shaw, the Giants are bursting with health. One of the problems the Giants had was that their quarterback, Charlie Connolly, had a bad ankle, and he missed some time. So that's why the Giants had like back-to-back games where they only scored 9 points. They won 2 games, they didn't even score a touchdown. Pat Summerall kicked 6 field goals in those 2 games. The Giants won 1 of them, and then they lost 1 of them. So the Giants got Connolly back. The Giants, Gifford was hurt early in the season. Alex Webster was hurt. Bob Schnelker, a lot of injuries. But they are starting to come together toward the end of the season here, which obviously benefits the Giants and seems to really benefit them in this game here quite a bit. So we got here. So the Eagles are 2.5-point favorites over the Redskins. They also face elimination from the title race unless Cleveland upsets the Giants and they win their own game. So the Giants are 5.5-point favorites to win. So it got ugly. It got ugly. All right, so let's go to the New York Times. All right, let's see here. The New York Times, December 7th, 1959 edition of the New York Times. Oh, here we go. All right. I got 3 of them from the New York Times. I want to share each one in order. Giants crushed the Browns before 68,436 for a conference title. Connolly's passes lead to a 48-7 rout. And if you hear snoring in the background, that's my dog, Randy. He's taking a nap down there, so I do apologize. So what we've got here? Looks like we got Phil King. There you go. Giants Phil King carries for a 30-yard gain behind the interference of Bob Schnelker, number right here. During the third period of Yankee Stadium, Cleveland's Warren Lair, right, closes in for an attempted tackle. Now you see right here, right? I mean, the Giants 21 first down. The Browns had 146 total yards. They had 36 yards passing. I mean, just atrocious. Giants had 526 yards. The Giants had like literally 400 extra yards than the Browns did in this game. The Browns completed 6 out of 20 passes and had 3 of them picked off. And I'll say this all the time: the amount of penalty yards called back in the day, just maybe it's just this year, I don't know, but it's very minimal. I mean, look at the Browns: 15 penalty yards called on. The Giants only had 50. I mean, sometimes nowadays you look at a game and you can't even watch it because the referees are taking over the game with their flags. So sometimes it's just absolutely freaking ridiculous. Another conference championship was neatly wrapped up by the Giants yesterday before a howling crowd of 68,436 at Yankee Stadium. The title was the Giants' second straight and third in 4 years in the Eastern Conference of the National Football League, with Chuck Connolly, Frank Gifford, Pat Summerall, and company sparking an offense that clicked for 526 yards. The New Yorkers overwhelmed the Browns 48-7. With 1 game remaining, the Giants have a 9-2 won-and-loss record. The Philadelphia Eagles are second at 7-4. And the Browns are 6-5. New Yorkers had reason to feel proud of their Giants, a long line of them headed by the 38-year-old Connolly, who fired 3 touchdown passes while completing 14 of 21 passes for 271 yards. Connolly's efforts ranked among the finest performances in the 12-year professional career of the man from Ole Miss. At the same time, though, the New Yorkers had reason to feel abashed by the mass performance of a good-sized group of rowdy fans. This mob surged from the bleachers and field seats prematurely ripped down one goalpost and was intent on doing the same thing at the other end. Players had to appeal to the fans. Now you'll see right here. I said it was 48-0 going into the final period. I mean, just it required 20 minutes, all the special and city policemen available, and an appeal by the New York players to permit the final 113 seconds of the game to be played. Among the day's bigger tasks was trying to keep count of the fights among the civilians. There were at least a dozen fights. Wow. I love football, huh? The game, in which the Browns did not tally until the Giants had all their points, was summed up pithily by Paul Brown, the head coach of the visitors. "We did not belong on the same field with them today," he said afterwards. The first time the Giants attacked, they went overhead, and for the main part, that's what they did most of the gray afternoon. Success for Connolly and his mates was not immediate, but before the first period had ended, Connolly convinced most of the onlookers and possibly the Cleveland defenders that he was the boss. Following a couple of exchanges of punts, the drive to New York's first of 6 touchdowns was launched. Connolly fired to Gifford for 31 yards and to Kyle Rowe for 35. By then, the home side had reached the 5, and a plunge by Alex Webster moved the ball down to the 3. Connolly's artistry, never more brilliant, especially in the faking department, then paid off. The quarterback sent Webster straight through, bluffed a toss to him, then directed the ball toward the right sideline in the end zone. There, Bob Schnelker, having got clear of the Browns' Warren Lair and Vince Costello, made the catch unmolested. Summerall's first of 4 conversions, he booted 2 field goals later, made it 7-0. That was the beginning of the end for the Browns. Lair, or Lar, and Low Ren, the pass defenders, spent a miserable afternoon vainly trying to stop the passing of Connolly and Don Heinrich. It seemed they were getting beat time and again, and long gains in the air were the order of the day for the Giants. We couldn't get to Connolly, was the complaint of the Cleveland linemen. Connolly had perfect protection, some said. The blocking for Connolly was excellent, others remarked. With these statements, Jim Lee Howell, the head coach of the New Yorkers, and Allie Sherman, his assistant in charge of the offense, agreed. Our pass blocking was the best of the year, Sherman said. Roosevelt Brown, Jack Stroud, Ray Whitehecker, Darrell Dess, and Al Barry, among others, provided the protection for Connolly, the jubilant Howell said. And that's the way it went through most of the day. Cleveland's passing with Milt Plum and Jim Ninowski doing the throwing was ineffective. The running of the mighty Jim Brown and the fleet Bobby Mitchell also did not pose a definite threat. Brown, the league's leading ground gainer, was limited to 50 yards and 15 carries. However, a head injury sidelined the former Syracuse ace for the second period. Mitchell was the one who kept the Browns from being blanked. He made an electrifying return of a punt by Don Chandler early in the fourth quarter. Mitchell galloped 78 yards for Cleveland's only touchdown. Lou Groza added the point after the Giants had horrible punt coverage during the year. Horrible. Otherwise, it was all Giants who defeated the Browns for the 5th straight time. Gifford made 2 touchdowns, one on a 2-yard angled slice in the second, the other on a 31-yard pass from Connolly in the third. Gifford's hip fake, which feinted Wren into the ground on the 30, was one of the prettiest maneuvers of the day. There was a 40-yard field goal by Summerall midway in the second period, which ended with the Giants ahead by 24-0. Then the Crows' interception and run of 30 yards accounted for the second touchdown in the period. Also in the third quarter was Summerall's 22-yard field goal. The league's leading scorer has clicked on 19 of 25 attempts this year. This three-pointer was sandwiched by Connolly's 31-yard scoring toss to Gifford and his 19-yarder to Rote. Heinrich took over for Connolly and enjoyed his best day. He clicked with 8 of 16 passes, including a 6-yard touchdown toss to Webster. The last 2 extra points, by the way, were booted by Chandler. Summerall suffered a pulled groin muscle early in the third period and left the game. The Browns, operating without the injured Ray Renfro and with a physically subpar Jimmy Brown, gained only 146 yards, 36 via the air. The New York defenders had something to do with that, though. Summerall may not be able to play at Washington next Sunday. The same is true of Phil King, the back who was the victim of a kick. He was removed on a stretcher to St. Elizabeth's Hospital, suffering a spinal injury. X-rays were negative last night, but King will be confined to the hospital for 2 or 3 days. Wow. Sherman revealed that the Giants' attack was designed to stress passing. We thought the Browns might be vulnerable there. That's why the Giants, who threw 40 aerials, completed 23 and registered their most points since they walloped the Redskins 51-21 in 1954. This was the second heaviest setback ever inflicted upon the Browns. It was topped only by the 1957 championship game where they lost to the Detroit Lions 59-14. I don't think it would be this easy, Howell admitted. Of course, the Giants are now finished at home. After meeting the Redskins on Sunday, they will engage the survivor of the Western Conference race on that team's gridiron December 27th. The 6 games at the stadium drew 389,603, a local record. So let's see. So that's what 30. Well, so that's well over 60,000 per. So that's pretty good. All right, so we got another one here from the New York Times. All right. All right, the December 7th, 1959 of the New York Times. All right, here we go. I mean, this is just crazy. Rioting fans halt the Giants-Browns game for 20 minutes. You got the Browns here, right? Fans scuffle about a goalpost at the Yankee Stadium, and right, the Browns players leave the field over here. I mean, just pandemonium. It's crazy. All right, pull this down here. Whoops. Thousands of professional football fans in a crowd of 68,436 rioted at Yankee Stadium. There we go. Near the end of the Giant-Brown game. Pouring onto the gridiron, the fans delayed the game for 20 minutes and threatened to cause it to be forfeited to the Browns. There was 1 minute 53 seconds to play, with the Giants leading 48-7. When the contest was halted, the riot was attributed to exuberance at the Giants' victory and to high feelings against the Browns. It was also noted that many in the crowd had been drinking. Coach Paul Brown of the here's the coach right here, running for his life, along with his players. Run for the clubhouse. Coach Paul Brown of the Cleveland in the light and right here leads the players from the field as fans riot with 1 minute 53 seconds left. So they couldn't finish that game. It was going to get forfeited to the Browns. So then the Giants would be only one game ahead of the Browns with one game left to go. So that was very important to get those fans off the field so that they could finish the game so the Giants could get the victory. I mean, well, how crazy would that be to win a game 48-7 and get it forfeited to the other team? So poor Paul Brown, buffeted and pushed by the crowd, retreated to the dressing room and was followed by his players. Brown reported later that the fans were trying to punch his players and to tear their uniforms. Sure, some, he said, were trying to tear his top coat. Traditionally, one of the bitterest rivals of the Giants, the Cleveland club always draws a large crowd here. Although the Browns were virtually eliminated from the race and the Giants needed only a tie to clinch the Eastern Conference title in the National Football League, the game had created unusual interest. As a result of the high spirits, there were at least a dozen fights among the fans as they crowded onto the gridiron. Their first intrusion took place with about 4 minutes to play. Shortly after that, the goalposts at the western end of the field were dismantled for souvenirs. This custom, a throwback to the collegiate days, had been adopted by professional football fans in New York previously. After the goalposts were toppled, the crowd began to crowd around the Browns bench and to encroach on the sidelines at the end of the field where the action was taking place. The public address announcer made frequent pleas for the fans to clear the field, but the requests were unheeded, and the action of the fans finally forced the evacuation of the Browns and their coach. The Giants, fearful of leaving the field because of their possibility of a forfeit, banded together in a group for protection. As it developed, the local heroes had less to fear than the visitors. At least 2 persons were injured. treated for facial cuts. One went to a hospital in the Bronx, and Murphy went to a hospital at the Yonkers Hospital. The police said both had been in the melee. No arrests were made, although members of the police detail of 70 patrolmen and 10 officers normally on duty outside the stadium until the end of the game were summoned to help the stadium's special police control. The crowd was moved back off the playing field, and the Browns returned. They ran out the remaining time by using ground plays. Coach Brown did not return to the sidelines, but watched the remaining action from a vantage point near the visiting dugout. Brown, who's been coaching professional football since 1946, said he'd never seen a crowd act the way the fans did yesterday. The game officials agreed that the riot was one of the worst in the memory of the National Football League contest. The Cleveland coach said that he had no intention of asking that a forfeit be declared. No threat of a forfeit was made by the officials, but the league rules call for the home team to maintain order at the games or risk such a loss by a 1-0 score. Giant officials have been pleased by the high pitch of enthusiasm shown by the fans since the club moved to the Yankee Stadium from the Polo Grounds 3 years ago. To heighten the spirit, the Giants have organized a cheerleading squad of girls to attend games and lead in cheers and songs. As a result of the Giants' popularity, 389,603 fans attended the 6 home games of the New York 11 this year. That is a record for the Giants. Until yesterday, however, the fans' enthusiasm never got out of hand to the point where a rival coach or players were threatened. All right, we got another one here from the New York Times. So let's back we go. December 7th, 1959 edition of the New York Times. The Giants were leading 41-0 in the third quarter yesterday and threatening once again. From the packed stands at Yankee Stadium came a thunderous, gleeful roar. Go, go, go! We want more! The ancient Romans in the Coliseum never shouted more lustily for blood. So the Marauders continued their pitiless slaughter of the Cleveland Browns and clinched their second straight Eastern Championship. Before the game, Jim Lee Howe was worried. I hope the boys aren't keyed up too high, he said. They weren't. They were keyed to a peak of perfection. Everything worked as the Brownies were buried under an avalanche of points. A week ago, the fans gave a day to Charlie Connolly. Yesterday, he gave it back to them. Connolly staged a magnificent display of pass-throwing artistry. One deep penetration after another as all his accomplices, especially Frank Gifford and the defensive platoon, performed deeds of daring do. The issue was never much in doubt after the early minutes, and yet few in the vast assemblage of 68,436 left before the massacre was over. This was much too spectacular a show. When the Giants put heads together in their first defensive huddle of the day, Sam Huff acted as the cheerleader. Hit that Jimmy Brown hard, exhorted the burly linebacker, and keep hitting him hard. The Browns swung into formation, and Jimmy boomed up the middle. Rosie Greer and Dick Modulewski scissored in on him with undue violence and held the best ball carrier in football to a miserably 1-yard gain. Come on, fellas, pleaded Sam. We have to hit him hard. You don't think that was soft, do you? Said Brown good-naturedly. It wasn't. The thunderous tackling of all the Giants marked the entire afternoon, not only in Brown, but also on all the Browns. The seemingly indestructible Jimmy even was forced to retire to the sidelines in the first quarter, the first time he was injured in his career. Hello, DeMage? Well, they said simultaneously. Gifford made catches yesterday that were worthy of either DiMaggio brother. It was the long gainer that riddled the Cleveland defenses and turned upside down what had promised to be a tense, tight struggle. So overjoyed were the fans and so impatient were they for the ridiculous ceremony of tearing down the goalpost that hundreds began pushing and tugging at the grandstand uprights when there was still 3 minutes left to play. With 2 minutes to go, they swarmed down the gridiron, halting play. If you do not clear the field, warned Bob Shepard of the public address system, there may be a forfeit. However, the officials did not mention a forfeit. By the time a semblance of order was restored, Paul Brown had taken his team to its dressing room. The Brownies were reluctant to return. After what had happened to them earlier, no one could blame them. I don't blame them either. The mob reaction was disgraceful. Fights were breaking out all over, and even the special police were helpless. Some of them got belted too. At the final gun, the players from both sides ran for their lives to the dressing rooms. The only excuse for such rowdy conduct, if there could be an excuse, was the ecstatic delight of emotionally wrought-up fans at the decisiveness of the championship clinching. "Bring on the Colts," shouted the jubilant Giant players in their clubhouse afterward. Off their smashing performances yesterday, they were sure they could beat anyone. Well, didn't help them in the championship game. If it is the Colts, as seems likely, the championship playoff will take place in Baltimore on December 27th. Next week's Giants joust with the Redskins in Washington will be meaningless. The Giants have it made. All right, what do we got now here? So now we go to the Daily News. December 7th, 1959 edition of the Daily News. All right, here we go. Bam! Giants belt Browns 48-7, clinched the Eastern title. Here's Pat Summerall with Charlie Connolly holding. He's got the kicking boot on. Jimmy Patton must have picked off a pass here. Frank Gifford on the run. Pat Summerall boots a 40-yard field goal as Charlie Connolly holds for him, and the Giants blocker holds off a rushing Brown. New Yorkers went on to trounce, but near the end of the game, hundreds of fans poured onto the field to take down the goalpost, halting play for 20 minutes. Jim Patton is hemmed in by the Browns' 14-yard line after taking a Cleveland a punt. He didn't pick a pass, so he's running a punt back. Cleveland's Jim Schaffner misses a tackle at the Giant 40-yard line, and Frank Gifford skirts to the Browns 35. All right, now we got another. Just there was just some pictures here. All right, so let's go back to the Daily News again, December 7th, 1959. The Daily News. Another one of the fans riot, wallop the Browns 48-7. Charlie Connolly chucking a pass here. Let's go with the pass. Kyle Rote waits for the ball near the Cleveland goal line. Oh, there's the ball. There's Frank Gifford. I mean, you don't see a Brown anywhere in the picture. You know, just was not a good day for the Browns. Rote receives the ball. Right, there's still Frank Gifford receives the ball as Galen Fisk, number 35, and Warren Lair, 24, close in. But they're too late as Rote dives across the goal line. So the goal right here, right? Splits the two of them, dives over the goal line for a touchdown. Here's where they start taking down the goalposts. It looks like post time at Yankee Stadium as one eager Giant fan dangles from the uprights. Crazy. All right, then we got another one from the Daily News. This one starts having a story. I just seen some of these pictures. I just wanted to share some of them. So let's go back to December 7th, 1959 edition of the Daily News. All right, here's the stories here. All right. We got Frank Gifford. That's onto a 38-yard pass fouled by Connolly in the third quarter. Giants sew up Eastern Division, 48-7. Browns are buried before 68,000. The Giants clinched their 11th NFL Eastern Division crown with a merciless and all but unbelievable beating of the Browns yesterday in a 48-7 rout that ended in a riot. Charlie Connolly threw for 3 touchdowns. Frank Gifford scored 2. Jimmy Brown was knocked out of action and had to inhale oxygen on the sidelines. Then in the final minute of the greatest triumph the Giants ever scored over their hated rivals, the supercharged emotions of the New York Rooters spilled over into Yankee Stadium. From the lower fringes of the huge throng, a mob of 68,436, constituting the third largest Giant turnout of all time, came a phalanx of screaming, squirming fans. Phalanx. It inundated the gridiron and swept over the cordon of cops guarding the north goalpost. The stadium arc lights flooded a scene as garish as anything out of the old Roman Coliseum. There was 1 minute 53 seconds left on the clock when the human cauldron boiled over, and it was 20 minutes later after threats of a forfeit had been made over the PA system, before the field could be cleared by the police and the game played to its conclusion. Coach Paul Brown, whose forces were absorbing their 5th straight shellacking from the men of Jim Lee Howe, pulled his players off the field and led them to their dressing room while order was restored. He probably wished he could have kept them there, because the Giants ripped his once proud and haughty Browns to tatters. The very first play of the game might well have proved the turning point. It wasn't known until later, but on that play, Jimmy Brown, smacked hard by Sam Huff and Mo Modulewski, was knocked loose from his senses. After that, he was useless to the Browns. The league's leading ground gainer left the game near the end of the opening period, the first time in his tremendous college or pro career the great fullback had ever been KO'd by an injury. Wow. And now this was almost his 3rd full season in the pros, because 1957 was his rookie season. So he played all of 57, all of 58, and almost all of 59 before missing any time at all. Let's see. And when he returned, Cleveland's chances were long gone. But 11 Jimmy Browns might have not helped the Browns yesterday. The Giants were as fired up as the crowd, and that was sky high. They engineered a 69-yard 5-play drive at 11:22 mark of the opening period, with Connolly whipping a 6-yard TD pass to end Bob Schnelker as Alex Webster crossed up the defense with a nifty bit of decoying. The count to 10-0 in the second on a first of 2 field goals by Pat Summerall, the league's leading scorer of 84 points. Then to 17-0 on a 77-yard 4-play spin featuring tosses by Gifford to Schnelker and Connolly to Joe Morrison. Gifford smashed over from the. All right, so let me. All right, so we'll go back. I want to come back to this story over here. So we'll go to another edition here of the Daily News. But I want to come back to this one here. Where are we here? Daily News. Back to the Daily News. Okay. Ba-ba-ba-bum. All right, so this was Gifford smashed over from the 2 to, darn, I keep doing it. Try it again. There's Pat Summerall, gets up a 40-yard field goal. By now, the fans were rubbing their eyes in amazement. The greatest Giant margin of victory over the Browns in their years of rivalry had been just 12 points, but the rout was just beginning. At halftime, the count was up to 24-0. as Lyndon Crow picked off a milk plum pass and sped 30 yards for Giants touchdown number 3. The Browns had nothing which to stem the tide as the second half opened in ceiling zero weather. The New York fans, still demanding more, took up the chant of "Go, go, go" as they scored, mounted to 31-0, 34-0, 41-0, 48-0. Wow. Connolly and Gifford collaborated on a 32-yard aerial strike. Summerall booted his 19th field goal, a giant record. Connolly and Rote teamed up for a 19-yard touchdown. And finally, Don Heinrich relieving chucking Chuck on the mound to engineer the 6th tally of the debacle, a 7-yard scoring pass to Alex Webster. The score was 48-0, and there was still a period to play. If the Browns had managed to consolation score early in the 4th chucker on Bobby Mitchell's glittering 78-yard punt return, the result would have been the worst beating a Paul Brown coach club had ever suffered. As it was, the final count turned out to be the second worst, topped only by the 59-14 thumping the Lions handed them in the 1957 title game. As for the Giants, they were putting more points on the board than they had registered in 5 seasons, or since tallying 51 against the Redskins in 1954. In achieving this triumph, which puts them in position to win their 5th NFL title, the Giants compiled a string of statistics of boxcar proportions. They gained a total of 526 yards to only 146 for the Browns and 21 first downs to only 9. Connolly, playing less than 3 full periods, connected with 14 of 21 passes in a tremendous pitching performance. Gifford ran the ball 9 times for 46 yards and hit with one of just 2 passes that he threw. This was accomplished against a club that went into the game the least scored against team in the league, 145 points. Brown came back in the second half with a score at 31-0 and picked up enough yardage to earn ground-gaining honors for the day with 50. It was scant consolation for his side's slaughter. Paul Brown tried everything to dike the Giants' flow of points, switching from quarterback Plum to Jim and back again, but nothing helped. Through the 4th period, the crowd was cheering the individual players as Howell moved them in and out of the game. Gifford and Rosie Brown drew tremendous applause. They shook the rafters of the old ballpark when rookie Joe Biscaha caught his first pass of the season. A couple of kids got hold of a pigskin after Don Chandler, subbing for Summerall, who pulled a groin muscle, missed a field goal. The lads went galloping off across the terrain with a cop in full pursuit, and the crowd loved it. As the big hand on the clock ticked into the final 2 minutes, the dame of emotions, with ingredients of elation, alcohol, and just plain rowdiness, broke loose to put a chaotic punctuation to one of the Giants' brightest achievements. And there was there's the starting lineups for each team. All right, so I want to go back to, there's another story there on the Daily News there. Let's see, gotta find it. Oh, back to the Daily News, December 7, 1959 edition of the Daily News. Okay, we go. Mob Yanks goalpost halts play at the stadium. So the Browns, their entire team retreated to the clubhouse under the stands. Harry Brubaker, the referee, then went to the dressing room and said, "Paul, we must finish the game, even if we don't have any goalposts. Please bring your team back on the field." Brubaker commented afterwards, "Paul was a perfect gentleman about it. He agreed immediately." Of the riot, Brubaker said, "It was the worst I've ever seen. It had a similar experience a couple of years ago in San Francisco, but this was worse." Brubaker said that he never had any idea of forfeiting the game. This was what the Giants feared and was the reason they, too, didn't leave the field. The referee said that the Browns' procedure was legal. The NFL rules state that in the event of a crowd cannot be controlled, the teams are to be removed from the field. Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, they can't. Get your players off the field. You don't know what the people in the crowd are going to do. Get them off the field. My God. Jim Lee Howell, Giants coach, corroborated Paul Brown's story. They were mixing in among of our players, pushing and milling. There were a lot of drunks. They were well-wishers, and it's nice to have fans, but they were too excited. I feared my own players might be hurt too, and I was afraid of a forfeit. After having won it, I didn't want to lose that way. You see right here, see with the scoreboard, right? Giants, with one game to go, had a 2-game lead. All right, we'll get here. The scoreboard clock showed 1:53 to go when the rioters got out of hand. The first incident to whip up the fans came when Don Chandler missed a field goal. A youngster picked up the ball and outraced a special who missed a tackle. Another special, however, overhauled the youngster and recovered the ball near the Giant bench. During the melee on the field, a well-dressed fan tried to steal off with the game ball. Andy Robustelli alertly diagnosed the theft and retrieved the leather. I don't want to be tackled by Andy Robustelli. After the gridiron was cleared, the game was resumed, and the Giants clinched their win. I don't know why they meaning the crowd, wanted to hurt us, Brown said. My players had a right to protect themselves, he continued. That's a league rule. Howell agreed. It is the duty of the home team to provide police protection and maintain order, he said. But we don't run the stadium. We just coach football. The fans were pushing us around, too. I tried to gather my players together, those on the bench, and tried to shout orders to the men on the field, but they couldn't hear me. The game ended with the gridiron completely ringed by spectators, with only the left field goal post still upright. This was leveled a few seconds after the final gun. 2 persons were hurt, somebody suffered a heart seizure during the melee. Wow. Somebody, obviously, I read before, somebody get a cut on their face. One guy who went to Yonkers for cuts on his scalp suffered when a portion of the goalpost struck him, and he was released. Joseph Moriarty, number 60, who's 62 years old, of Brookfield, Massachusetts, suffered a heart attack while seated in the stands. He was admitted to a hospital where his condition is listed as fair. I hope everything went well for him, although I'm sure he's probably if he was 62, he's long gone. I mean, he's not, unless he's 130 years old right now. But 2 Giants were hurt. The Giants wound up with 2 injuries as well as victory yesterday, and one could be serious. Sub-fullback Phil King was removed to St. Elizabeth's Hospital with partial paralysis due to a neck injury. He was kicked. King was wheeled out on a stretcher to an ambulance. Wow. Pat Summerall, the place kicker, sustained a pulled left groin muscle on a kickoff near the end of the first half and didn't come back after intermission. He should be okay for the Washington game next Sunday. Oh, well, I'll have to wait and see. All right. And what do we got here? Go to the Plain Dealer, which is Ohio, was a kind of like a Cleveland paper. So December 7, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. All right, let's read this one. Got a couple here, 2 pages from the Plain Dealer. And we can wrap this up here. All right. There we go. Whoops. Charlie Connolly, number 42, throwing the ball right here. Whoops. Right here. The Bob Schnelker. Well, you got 2 guys standing there. You got Webster and you got Schnelker. Charlie Connolly gets off a 3-yard TD pass to Bob Schnelker. I guess either one. I guess Gifford. Webster could have took it, or Snell, but Snell could wind up getting it. Defeat is Brown's second worst. And Minnie Minoso gets traded, just in case you're wondering. For the second straight year, the New York Giants have used the Cleveland Browns as a final springboard to the Eastern Division crowd. Paced by the pinpoint passing of veteran Charlie Connolly, who threw for 3 touchdowns, the Giants yesterday ended the Browns' faint title hopes 48-7 before 68,436 on a chilly day at Yankee Stadium. Wild Giant rooters, some of whom had been at the stadium since Saturday night in order to get a seat, swarmed on the field with 1 minute and 53 seconds left in the game. They milled around the edges of the gridiron, crowded into both end zones, and finally pulled down the goalpost at the home plate end of the field, when a few of the spectators, obviously intoxicated, began swinging at the Browns. Paul Brown left the field, and his team followed. Some semblance of order was restored after 20 minutes of near riot. Club-wielding police finally got the actual playing field free of the mob, and the Browns returned to run out the clock and make it a regulation game. After the players of both teams had sprinted to the dressing room and the disgraceful mob scene continued, there must have been 24 fights going on when the lights were turned off and the unhappy picture blacked out. The nightmarish finish of the Giants' 5th straight victory over Cleveland seemed to take... Let's try this again. Seemed to take some of the edge off the victory for the Giants, who now have grabbed the division honors 2 of the last 3 seasons. Decks are almost cleared for a rematch for Jim Lee Howell Club and Baltimore if the Colts can get by the Rams next Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles. Yeah, I thought it was Los Angeles. The Browns, now in 3rd place in the East, a game behind the Eagles, finish next Sunday in Philadelphia. They can tie for 2nd with a victory in that windup. It was the second worst beating Paul Brown's team has taken. Worst was the 59-14 championship playoff loss to the Lions in 1957. The pattern yesterday was much the same as at Briggs Stadium, where the 57 championship game was played at. Browns had key offensive men injured in both games, and the burden put on the defense was just too great. Cleveland's defensive backfield looked bad with Connolly and Don Heinrich completed 23 of 40 passes. The blame should not be entirely theirs, however, as the defensive line just wasn't able to exert enough pressure. It was the best protection I've ever had, the quiet-spoken Connolly explained in the dressing room. I had a lot of fun playing this game. With that kind of help from the line, a guy could go on playing a long time. The Browns' offense, hampered at the start by injuries to Mike McCormick, Jimmy Ray Smith, and Lou Groza, lost Jim Brown late in the first period. The big fullback, the league's leading ground gainer, actually was injured for the first time he carried the ball. He hit tackle. All right, let's go to finish reading up this from the Plain Dealer. All right, the Plain Dealer, here we go. He hit tackle for a 2-yard gain. And let me see if I can do this here. Oh, there it again. Man, it is touchy. Try it again. For a 2-yard gain and was believed to have been kicked in the head in the pileup. He remained in action until almost the end of the quarter. So he had a concussion probably pretty much, and he was in there still playing. Right? Mill Plum noticed that he seemed groggy, and Jim went to the sidelines. He was out of action for the remainder of the half. Brown hadn't missed any pro action previously in his 3 seasons with the Browns because of injury. In fact, he couldn't recall ever being on the sidelines at Syracuse for that reason. So everything went poorly for the Browns on a weekend which started with a bus breakdown on the way to the hotel from the airport. Wow. And a heavy fog that hung over the New York area indicated a late arrival home. Wow. Credit must be given the Giants, though. They survived a batch of injuries and bounced back to win their last 3 games for a 9-2 record. The two clubs were tied 3 weeks ago with 6-2 marks, but the Cleveland Browns cooperated to drop 3 straight. The Browns' only touchdown was scored by Bobby Mitchell on a 78-yard punt return of a Don Chandler punt early in the fourth quarter. Groza made his first appearance and kicking the extra point. New York already had a 48-0 lead when Mitchell burst down the sideline and was sprung at midfield by Rich Kreitling's fine block. The Giants scored only once in the first quarter on Connolly's 4-yard pass to Bob Snelker, the former Bowling Green end from Upper Sandusky. New York came up with 17 points in the second period to finish off completely any Cleveland hopes. Pat Summerall's 40-yard field goal hiked the count to 10. Then Frank Gifford, who had his usual inspired afternoon against Cleveland, cracked 2 yards for the second touchdown with time running out in the period. Frank hit Snelker with the halfback pass for 38 yards in the push, and Connolly fired to Joe Morrison, the former Cincinnati star, for a 29-yard gain. There was just 1:40 left when Summerall added the extra point, but time enough for another score by the aroused Giants. The New York defense line, which dogged Plum and his replacement through the misty afternoon, rushed Milt. So his sideline pass intended for Billy Houghton was short, and Lyndon Crow picked it off. The halfback breezed 30 yards for the touchdown. It was 24-0 at the half, and from then on, only a question of the size of the score. Giants got 24 points in the third period to finish their points producing. Gifford took a 31-yard pass from Connolly for 1 touchdown, and Connolly, the 38-year-old Mississippi cotton farmer, hit Kyle Rowe for 19 yards and another. Alex Webster made a leaping grab of a 6-yard pass in the end zone with 2 defenders riding his back for the last of 6 touchdowns. Heinrich, Charlie's replacement, threw that one, showing how bad things were. The other points of the period were provided by Summerall on a 22-yard field goal. Except for Mitchell's jaunt, the Browns never were able to mount a real scoring threat. They got to the Giants' 40 in the first period only to lose the ball on Jim Brown's first fumble of the season. The groggy fullback, completely back to normal after the shellacking, can be excused for that one. They advanced to the New York 41 in the second period and got as far as the 38 before Sam Huff proved the spoiler with a pass interception in the last period. The Browns' total offense was only 146 yards as compared to 526 for the Giants, who made 401 yards passing. Connolly fired for 271 himself. Wow. Hitting on 14 of 21 passes. Perhaps even more important than the chucker were the 2 giant lines. Jim Lee Howell has a club with the strength up front to make things interesting in that return match at Baltimore on December 27th. But the Colts can do their part next Saturday in Los Angeles, which they wind up doing, of course. And then then they wind up having the championship game, obviously, in Baltimore. And then, in that championship game, it was 31-16. But the Giants were actually winning that game. Of course, it didn't help them. They were winning 9-7 going into the fourth quarter. And then the Colts scored 24 unanswered points. It was 31-9. And the Giants scored a touchdown pass with like about a minute or 2 left to go in the game to make it look somewhat respectable. But it was 9-7 going into the fourth quarter there. But it was not meant to be. But, the Browns were injured. The Giants were riding too high. Giants had too much going on. The Giants were actually healthy with Charlie Connolly healthy. Right? The Giants had pretty much everybody was healthy for this game, although Pat Summerall got injured. Phil King got injured. But going into this game, they weren't healthy. And they had a lot going, basically win this game, beat the snot out of Paul Brown and the Cleveland Browns, and you wind up winning the division. You go back to the championship game, and that's what wound up happening. So that's what happened on this date, December 6th, 1959. as the Cleveland Browns play the New York Giants in a riot-filled Yankee Stadium in pro football's first 50 years. And a goalpostless game. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.